Hey everybody, how's it going? Lord Josh here once again. Welcome back to the channel and to Taoist Magic. I had a very interesting thought come through the other day. I was thinking and pondering to myself, I've got a Facebook friends list of almost 5,000 people, give or take. It's almost maxed out. And 85% of the people on that list are deeply into magic and the occult. Most of them are very well established. They're authors, they have YouTube channels, they have Etsy shops selling talismans. And I would say the vast majority of those people on my list are left-hand path practitioners, or they are Western occultists, or they're into black magic. And it got me pondering, why is it that outside of our very tight-knit, small niche Taoist group, why is it that hardly anyone talks about Taoist magic? Because I've been on YouTube now for many, many years making my videos, and there really isn't anyone else who makes regular uploads on Taoist magic, aside from one or two people that have been doing it for just as long as I have. But compare that to the left-hand path community, where there's people popping up every week, new people coming out of the woodwork. It seems like Taoism and Chinese spirituality in general is largely ignored, and I think that's wrong. So I would like to make this video for those out there thinking, where the hell do I start? If you feel intimidated by the perceived complexity and technicality of Taoism and the magic involved, watch this, because I'll be giving you tips on how to get into the entry level of Taoist magic. Please keep in mind these are my own personal tips that I found useful on my own spiritual journey. So if you're new to Taoist magic, find a subject that fascinates you and concentrate your focus onto that branch of magic. So I'll use myself as the perfect example here. When I first started in Taoism, I didn't have the hopes or the intentions of mastering Taoism as a whole. I had very specific goals, and I knew what I wanted to do before I did it. I wanted to master Taoist weather magic, and I had this laser beam, laser focus on that one particular subject because I knew I was passionate about it and I felt motivated and heavily inspired. It was after reading the fantastic story from Romance of the Three Kingdoms, where Kong Ming summons the winds at the Battle of the Red Cliffs. After reading that and after having my spiritual experience, that sort of planted the seed in my mind where it felt like a calling. I really felt compelled to walk the journey of a weathermancer, and so I have. But a lot of people don't always have a clear goal in mind. I feel like that's where people go wrong, because they look at Taoism or Taoist magic as a whole, as a giant subject. So they see necromancy, feng shui, weather magic, star stepping, longevity, telekinesis, invisibility. They see all these things and they're thinking, wow, I can't learn all that. Well, maybe you shouldn't, because in ancient times you would have masters and priests who specialized in very specific forms of magic. When you utilize the powers of focused attention, your ability to concentrate onto one single subject, that enables you to learn rapidly. So this whole jack of all trades, master of none type of learning, that doesn't work for me. People try to learn a little bit about this and a trifle of this, and what that does is it dilutes the entire process. You can do that later, but in the beginning, use fierce one-pointedness. Be determined about what it is that you want to learn about, and dedicate and commit yourself to that one subject. And if you do that, you are learning with the way of the masters. That's how true masters are made. You don't learn shit by going from one subject, jumping from one to the other. That's nonsense. So if you do it this way, you'll learn extremely quickly, but you'll also be able to completely give all of your energy to that subject. And that's what it deserves. You deserve to learn, but the subject deserves your attention. That's kind of how meditation works. One-pointedness, focused attention. So why is it that magic itself is a meditation why shouldn't the learning of the magic also work like meditation? Because that is a part of the magical process. When you learn about a spell, or you learn about mythology, or you learn how to communicate with a deity, that's part of the spiritual process. And it all requires focused attention. So utilize it and you'll learn very quickly. Okay, tip 2. Find a Taoist spirit, entity, immortal guardian, or historical figure that you can develop a close bond with. Now, there's so many of them out there at this point. There really is a ridiculous amount of Chinese entities and ghosts that you can work with. But I would say, again, using the law of one-pointedness, find a spirit that you resonate with. Find one that you can use as an endless source of inspiration. So for me, it's Zhuge Liang, the great prime minister of the Shu Han state during the Three Kingdoms era of imperial China. He is the one that I turn to if I'm feeling a bit low, or if I feel burnt out with magic, or I feel like I've kind of hit a brick wall spiritually. I will think of Kong Ming, and I will use him as my inspiration to keep moving forward and progressing. So I'm not talking about making pacts. I'm not saying sell your soul or go into any kind of contractual agreement with these entities. I'm saying find something or someone, preferably, in my opinion, I would say find an historical figure, someone who once walked the earth as a mortal, as a human being, that you can have that kind of human interaction with that entity in a spiritual way, in dreams, in astral projection, in trance state. It helps to have a guide of sorts that can walk you through Taoism. And for me, it's always been Kong Ming. There's been so many times where I've gotten stuck, but I've been able to overcome the challenges by having an incredibly well-developed friendship and bond with Kong Ming. So I advise that you look out there and you try to find someone or something that you can make contact with, and you can stay in contact with them. But don't do what a lot of people seem to do in magic today. Don't do, oh, I've got what I want, I don't need this spirit anymore, see you later, and you push them out of your life. That's not right. Keep them with you for the rest of your life, as long as they are a positive influence. Again, do your research, make sure you choose wisely. Okay, here's an interesting one that most people outside of Taoism won't have any idea about. When you walk the path of Taoist magic, pick a school and stick to it. Now, what do I mean when I say school? There's really no such thing as a universally accepted form of Taoist magic, because there's so many lineage groups out there, so many sects, so many schools of thought, and they each offer a wildly different interpretation of Taoist occultism. So if you join Zheng Yi, or at least subscribe to the belief systems of Zheng Yi, you will be learning an entirely different system of magic as opposed to the Mao Shan school. That doesn't mean that any school is better or worse than any other. It simply means they are different. And if you jump from one school to the next, you'll be extremely confused and perplexed, and I would not recommend that you do that. Now, with me personally, I kind of fell into sticking with the Zheng Yi school because it was the first one that I had exposure to. I was reading the books of Professor Jerry Allen Johnson, and most of his teachings come from the Zheng Yi. So I stuck to that, and it actually resonates with me, and it makes the most sense to me. I'll give you a very basic and straightforward example of how the schools differ in Taoism. So the hands have yin and yang properties and qualities. In one school, the right hand may be yang. In another school, the right hand may be yin. Now, you might think that slight difference, how can that make any noticeable change? But actually, it radically changes your magical experience when there's a switch. If you're not used to it and you go from one school to the next and it changes, that will change your experience. So it's better to develop a strong foundation and not confuse yourself with getting things mixed up. So when you find a school of thought, stick to it and master it. You can get yourself caught up in a similar situation when you read a lot of books on the same subject, like for example with Feng Shui. There's so many different camps to practical and theoretical feng shui that one will cancel out the other. So you have to decide, okay, am I going to go with form school, or am I going to go with the compass school, or am I going to try some Western variations? End of the day, they've all got their legitimacy, but it's all about settling with one or the other. And that's what I recommend people do. Now, here's a very important one: learning Chinese history and mythology. Now, you might say, oh, interesting, I can understand the mythology, but why the history? Well, in Taoism, a lot of the old Taoist legends always trace back to military strategy, to historical battles, to ancient warfare. A lot of the old emperors and court officials and warlords actually used Taoist politics and Taoist philosophy to govern their states. And I personally find it fascinating to read about Taoist leadership and how that works governing people. And I think it behooves you to truly go into Chinese history like what I've done with Kongming. I dedicate, a lot of my time to magic, but I also feel like the history is a worthwhile endeavor as well. I've made many, many documentaries just talking about what I call vanilla history without the magic. But so often these things do cross over that it warrants you to take a good look at Chinese history and mythology. Learn about the 8 immortals. Learn about the 3 pure ones. Learn about Taoist rulers. Learn about politics and how that works in a Taoist context. It's all very fascinating, and it will, in the end, enrich your experience when it comes to a spiritual journey. Couple of examples of Taoist spells used in times of conflict and war. You have Zhuge Liang using contracting the land against Sima Yi, and you have Zuo Se, Master Blackhorn, using a variety of many different skills against Cao Cao to avoid being captured. So in Taoism, it's very common when you look at the myths and the legends and the stories, you will always find a connection to battles of some kind. Here is one you can't do overnight. Learn how to read, write, and speak basic Chinese. Now, I can't hold a conversation with a Chinese speaker, but I am able to recognize a lot of the Chinese characters like wind, fire, and water, and I'm also able to create and craft a lot of the Fu talismans to an acceptable level. So a massive part of ritualistic Taoism is the creation of the Fu, which are the rectangular slips of usually yellow colored paper. And on that paper, you will draw things in Chinese, and you have to get it right, otherwise it won't work. Same can be said for words of power and incantations. So if you're saying a Chinese incantation and you're translating it into English during a ritual, you're going to lose something in that translation, and you'll also lose the power behind it as well. I'm not saying it's totally powerless, but it adds another layer of authenticity to your magic when you say it in the original language. I've found this out from personal experience. For quite a few years, I was going through my rituals, and I was thinking, as long as you say the right words, and as long as you've got the right intent, I guess it shouldn't really matter. But that's not true. So now I say 50% of my incantations in English and 50% in Chinese. And I've noticed a massive difference in my experiences. So you'll thank me for this one. This is a piece of advice that I wish I would have gotten when I first started. Be aware of fake talismans and fraudulent products when buying online. Whenever you buy online, you always run the risk of being misled by something. Usually the picture looks greater than the item that you receive. Now, this is very true, especially when you're buying from China. You have to be incredibly vigilant and hyper aware. When you look on these sites, do not be scammed. So there's plenty of imitation peachwood swords out there that you look at them, and to the untrained eye, they look really cool. I've been misled many times actually buying a peachwood, and you get it and you hold it in your hands and it feels terrible. It feels cheap. It's an imitation. It's not real. And then you can't use it for the intended ritual because it doesn't have the same effect. The same goes for when you're ordering products like feather fans. You have to be so careful what kind of feathers are in that fan. If you get something like eagle feathers, forget it. You can't get that. It will be confiscated at the airport. But the sites often won't tell you exactly what feathers you are getting. So you have to ask around and do your research and find a good site. I would personally recommend going onto a site called ChinaCart. That's where I get most of my feather fans, and also most of my robes are from that site. I envy the other magicians in various communities where all they have to do is go to their local New Age crystal shop and they can buy all of their magical supplies in person from that one shop in one visit or so. It's amazing that they can do that. Taoists can't do that, not unless you live in China. In the Western world and here in Britain, there's no Taoist shops. I couldn't go into a New Age store and come out with a Kongming fan and a Taoist robe and a Bagua mirror. It just isn't going to happen. So in order for me to gather all of my paraphernalia, I have to shop online. And that opens up the risk that you can be scammed. But don't worry too much, because it's not all bad. There's plenty of amazing websites out there where you can buy talismans and robes, and you'll usually be blown away by them. I mean, ChinaCart is the prime example. I must have bought, no lie, probably about 15 robes from them, and I've never been disappointed with a single one. And I've bought many fans and hats and shoes and accessories. I've never been disappointed with ChinaCart. It's the other sites like AliExpress that you have to watch out for. So my advice is find a good site and stick to it. So the last tip that I would give, and perhaps the most important one in my opinion, is never ever lose your sense of humor. I feel like today, with the way things are in the occult world, it seems that like the end goal is always to become something that you aren't currently, to transform yourself into a god or some kind of powerful entity, whereas I personally believe that already exists within most people. And the goal shouldn't be to become a brilliant god. It should be to become a brilliant human being. And actually being a brilliant human being is akin to being a god. And in that is realizing that you have a sense of humor and you're able to carry it with you no matter how much you learn or how great you think you are, that you can laugh at yourself and you never take yourself too seriously. Because I don't. I do not take my image or my reputation seriously whatsoever. And it feels very freeing to be in that position. So I would say no matter who you are, how ascended you believe you are, it doesn't make any difference. Hold on to what makes you human, and that will be your superpower, to always hold on to the sense of humor and the silliness. There's power in looking silly and knowing that you do. And in Taoism, humor is a big part of the learning process. So thank you for watching this video, everybody. I hope it's been informative to you, and I hope you will consider giving Taoist Magick a try. Take care, and I'll see you later.